In each of these cases, an employer allegedly fired a longtime employee simply for being homosexual or transgender. Clayton County, Georgia fired Gerald Bostock for conduct unbecoming a county employee shortly after he began participating in a gay recreational softball league. Altitude Express fired Donald Zarda days after he mentioned being gay. And RG&GR Harris Funeral Home fired Amy Stevens, who presented as male when she was hired, after she informed her employer that she planned to live and work full-time as a woman. Each employee sued, alleging sex discrimination under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The 11th Circuit held that Title VII does not prohibit employers from firing employees for being gay, so Mr. Bostock's suit could be dismissed as a matter of law. The Second and Sixth Circuits, however, allowed the claims of Mr. Zarda and Mrs. Stevens, respectively, to proceed. So that's just the beginning of it, but really what that means is that now this law prohibits people from firing, individuals to identify as lesbian or gay or transgender. So I was going to leave this time to our panelists, let them introduce themselves to the rest of the wonderful audience. So Naiymah Sanchez, you're first.
Hi everyone, I'm Naiymah Sanchez. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Trans Justice Coordinator here at the ACLU of Pennsylvania, and I am a proud out trans woman.
Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Roper, and I apologize. I seem to be signed in under the wrong account, so you can't see my pronouns are she and hers. I am the Deputy Legal Director with the ACLU of Pennsylvania, so I am one of the lawyers who litigates claims like those of Mr. Bostock and Ms. Stevens and Mr. Zarda.
I would like to, however, bring Amy Stevens into this space. Amy did not live to see the ruling. She passed away, unfortunately, maybe a few weeks prior to the ruling, maybe a month before the ruling. But I do want to speak her name and bring her into the space and really give gratitude to her as our ancestors for taking this case to the Supreme Court with the ACLU. So we say your name, Amy, and I have nothing but gratitude to you. Thank you.
So I'm going to start with some questions. So this question is going to go to Mary Catherine first. What does this victory mean for Pennsylvanians?
Well, first of all, the federal anti-discrimination law, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, of course, applies in every state. So that means that Pennsylvanians also who experience discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity or gender expression have the right to sue in federal court for violation of their rights under Title VII. It means more to us though, because we also have our own state non-discrimination law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. And the federal law only applies to employers of a certain size. They have to have at least 15 employees. The Pennsylvania law applies to even to smaller employers, and so protects more people. And I think we expect that the Pennsylvania courts will apply the same standard and will find protection for LGBT people under Pennsylvania's law to even those who don't have protection under the federal law.
Thank you. It's actually really fantastic because we're aware of employment laws here in the States. So I know, I wanted to hear how much that was important to our state specifically. Thank you very much. Thank you. So this question will go to Naiymah. How does this victory affect LGBTQ youth here in the city? Because we've talked about this before.
I mean, this ruling right here just is an explicit vouch of support in upholding the laws to protect LGBTQ folks in the workplace. So I would say for youth, for anyone LGBTQ, that they should know that the Supreme Court supports them, the ACLU supports them, and we will fight tooth and nail to make sure that you are able to work as authentically as yourself in your truth. And that's what it means. I want our upcoming generation to know that the leaders of today are continuing to fight on their behalf.
Thank you so much, Naiymah. Thank you. Next question. So are there next steps? And if so, like, what are they? Like, will we be moving towards getting more laws passed that will protect individuals, more vulnerable populations when it comes to public service? Even though I know some of those things are already in place because of other laws, what are the next steps? Either one of you can answer, or both of you.
Well, so there are a couple places where there's more work to do. First of all, there are a lot of federal laws that prohibit discrimination on the basis of quote unquote sex in lots of different contexts. And the first thing to do is to make sure that this same reasoning that says, look, when you discriminate against someone on the basis of sexual orientation, you're discriminating on the basis of sex. When you discriminate against someone on the basis of gender identity, gender expression, you're discriminating on the basis of sex. We need that to be applied across all of those federal laws. And really have the broad-based protection against discrimination that we should have. There's then a special extra step to be taken in Pennsylvania in terms of making our own laws explicit. In terms of, there's no reason to just say, well, sex covers it, so we're fine. We should have explicit laws prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. And it is particularly important because in Pennsylvania, we have a protection that doesn't exist at the federal level. When it comes to employment, we have very similar protections. But when it comes to public accommodations, that is how you're treated when you walk into a restaurant, how you're treated when you walk into a gym, how you're treated when you walk into a library. Pennsylvania has protections that don't exist at the federal level. And we need to make sure that those protections protect our LGBT Pennsylvanians everywhere they go. You shouldn't have to worry about how you're going to feed yourself because of your LGBT identity, but you also shouldn't have to worry about whether you can get service in a public accommodation or whether you're going to be safe as you travel around the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Naiymah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, Mary Catherine, said it clearly that the road in this movement continues. And explicit protections means, term it out, meaning I need you to explicitly say that you're protecting me, my gender identity, my gender expression, and my sexual orientation from discrimination in all areas. And again, this is a major win for us in the Supreme Court. And at home, we still, have a fight here. And that is, sex discrimination includes gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation, but we do need it to explicitly state that. In all areas. In all areas. All areas. I mean, we can be protected in work, but where do we spend our money if we're being discriminated against? Where are we living if we can't find safe and affirming housing? Let's just think about education, and all of these other factors that come into play in the daily lives of everyone. This is why the fight continues.
Well, and remember, this is This is just a court decision, right? And it was a court decision that is interpreting the words of the federal law. So first of all, Congress can change that law to say, we mean the sex you're assigned at birth, but we don't mean to cover any other, any other kind of consideration. We're gonna cut this out. Or we can have a future Supreme Court that says, no, we're going to read the law differently. That is why it's really important that we not say, oh, I guess it's fine. We need the explicit protections. If you honor, respect, and protect LGBT Pennsylvanians, name them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so the last question, it's not really a question, but I wanted both of you to kind of describe, like, in your own words, like where you were during the time where you knew you were about to go for this and get to work and start on this particular fight. Like, just tell us, like, where you were emotionally, what was going on at that time, like what kind of fed you that passion to move forward with this?
Well, for me, I've experienced discrimination in the workplace, and pardon, I live in a residential area, so there may be some horns honking or some motorcycles going by. So excuse me, everyone. Disclaimer. I've experienced discrimination in the workplace, whether it was, because I checked a box on an application, I was terminated for employment because, at the bottom of the application, it says that you sign that everything on this statement is true and factual and punishable, by law, and by law, which was termination of my employment. It wasn't because I did anything wrong at my job. It was that I actually checked my identity as female when they only gave me two options. The option for me is only female. That's how I identify. And that's when I knew that my voice mattered in this matter, because that experience is what they need to hear. A second encounter was being wrongfully terminated from a community-based organization, and for trans people, we experience these micro, macro aggressive behaviors a lot in community-based organizations, where our voices are silent, because if we are outspoken about something or injustice, we are terminated. That is a form of discrimination, and that's a form of discrimination that I experienced. So where I was at was at this specific time in my life was very pivotal, going from sex work to regular work or traditional work, if you may, where I was told that this was my only option, was to engage in sex work to provide the needs. And I was trying to find a way out. And my way out was applying for a traditional job and being told 4 years later that because of my gender identity or what I checked on my application was grounds for me to be terminated, which was a direct discrimination of who I am. And that's where I knew that, like, I had to get my feet on the ground and do something to change this, because how I felt at that moment walking outside of my job being terminated, I was lost, and looking at where I come from to that day, I didn't want to return to that. That was my will not to return to that. So how do I change that or how do I change that experience, or for someone else experiencing that, is by doing this work. And the smallest changes I was grateful for, which was policies inside some employers. it's hard to change the state because our legislator, for some reason, don't think that we exist, LGBT people, or that they are under this impression that we're already protected, which we're saying that we are, but it's unfortunate that it's not explicitly protecting us, you know? So the smallest changes that I've made from the day that I was terminated or discriminated against in the workplace really has me grateful that it made some changes for someone else that came behind me. And Mary Catherine, I'll pass it to you, sorry.
No, that was wonderful. And thank you, Naiymah. Thank you.
I always love hearing you talk about your experience, Naiymah. It's so grounding. So I came out in the mid 80s when I was in college. The attitudes toward, well, we'll just say gay and lesbian people were different than, you know, trans people were barely mentioned at the time. Honestly, like, the thing that brought me to this work was in 1986, the United States Supreme Court decided the case of Bowers v. Hardwick, which was a case in which they said it was perfectly fine for the state of Georgia to put people in jail for being gay. And, you know, I looked at that decision and I said, well, I'm not going to sit around and let that stay around, right? You know, that was like that's just wrong. And I need to go help fix it. And, you know, 17 years later, in 2003, the Supreme Court decided Lawrence v. Texas and said, no, you can't put people in jail for being gay. And since then, we've made more strides in the court. But honestly, the court is not leading public opinion here. Public opinion has led the court. And the national coming out movement that started after the Bowers decision has been so important. You know, I've known from those days that to be visible, to be part of the fight is part of my life, in part because it is whether I want it to or not, right? I mean, I wasn't wearing a sign that says lesbian when people, you know, threatened me and you know, and harassed me when I was younger. But it's also, you know, I also choose to be part of the fight because it's who I am, it's who my brothers and sisters are. And I'm really, really proud to also stand with trans people because, right, that is a community, our trans brothers and sisters who have just been left out of the conversation for so long, and they are very much the focus of the religious backlash now, and it's so, so important to resist that and stand together. So sorry, that was me on a soapbox. I'll get down now.
I welcome those. I love when people, you know, come to panels and really put their soul into it. So thank you both. Thank you, Mary Catherine. Thank you, Naiymah. These are the contributions to the law and to legislature that really changes the lives of people who are vulnerable. So I want to thank you both for your amazing work, and we all feel that and welcome that. I just wanted to make an announcement for all of everyone in our audience who is listening and watching. If you have any questions, please submit them in the chat section, please, in the comment section. And in about another 10 minutes or so, we are going to do some Q&A. So I wanted to close with one final question. And in reference to where you see, I know we've discussed this a little bit about what our next steps are, but what does the future of legislature look like to you in reference to empowering and protecting individuals who identify along the LGBTQ spectrum? So we will start with Mary Catherine first, and then Naiymah, you will close with the thoughts.
Well, unfortunately, I have to tell you that the thing we're going to be dealing with have been dealing with, are dealing with now, are going to be dealing with even on a greatly heightened basis coming forward, are those who want to claim that because they have religious views that do not accept LGBT people, that they should be exempt from non-discrimination laws. And we are seeing that argument in just every aspect of life, whether it's employment, whether it is, you know, public accommodations, whether it is, for heaven's sake, foster care agencies that don't want to work with LGBT foster parents, not because they aren't good parents, but because they don't meet their religious standards. Like, this is the battle, and this is, you know, the fight of our lives. Because, you know, if your anti-discrimination law has a great giant exception for anybody who claims a religious basis for their desire to discriminate, is just not worth the paper it's written on.
You're right about that. Thank you. Naiymah?
Again, I have to second what Mary Catherine said. You know, the challenge that we have is that, you know, folks are interpreting the Constitution or their constitutional right to religion as they want to use that as a tool of discrimination. And your right to practice your religion does not give you a right to implement those beliefs on the next person. Any religion, any faith tell you to treat the next person with kindness. And we're forgetting that, is that me as an individual should come first. There was a saying by the late Dr. Martin Luther King, is that, you know, I want people to be judged by the contents of their character, you know, and the unfortunate part is that their characters are not being judged. It's their identities that are being judged. And the education piece around the separation of your personal beliefs and our community wellness. You know, community wellness is taking care of your neighbor, understanding that we may not believe the same thing or look the same, but I should respect you because that's what I owe you. You know, we owe each other respect. You know, we have a road ahead of us, and we've come a long way in 51 years, I shall say, since Stonewall. We've come a long way, and I'm grateful to the ancestors, my elders, and I'm grateful to the leaders of today that we're still able to take the baton and continue the run, you know, continue the race. But I'm willing to pass this baton to a younger generation because I know it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop with the Supreme Court ruling that we're protected federally in the workplace from discrimination, because interpretation is everything and it's only a ruling. We have to educate our community. You know, we have to be the change that we wish to see. You know, the change that we wish to see is what you know, I remember watching, you know, I get into my little shenanigans, but I remember watching like the beauty pageants and they'd be like, well, one thing you wish, and oh, peace on earth. You know, how do we get to peace on earth? You know, it's respecting one another, respecting that we're all different in our own way, and not different, but we're all unique in our own way, and understanding that our differences is unique, you know, and that's the one thing that we should honor about each other, is that we are all unique, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it with that, because you know I get into my little rambling, but that's just me. I did, however, I am looking at Facebook Live messages on my phone, because I don't want to leave out messages from folks who are watching us live. So if, when you open it up, if I could read this one question that I have from someone, I would love to. Oh, wait, I see Kim saying that. Okay, yeah, all right, sorry. You're muted.
Okay, so, hi. Thank you, Mary Catherine. Thank you very much, Naiymah. Thank you so much for all of your inspiring and strengthening words during this panel. Absolutely, the fight continues, but you make us feel a lot better about the fight ahead. So thank you for making us stronger. Thank you for doing the hard work, because I know it is, and it takes a lot of patience and a lot of willpower and a lot of strength. So I commend you both. Thank you. So now we're going to get to questions. This question is from Amanda. My organization is currently writing a local anti-discrimination ordinance that protects LGBTQ not only for employment, but also for housing and accommodations. Will that be happening at the federal level anytime soon? So who wants to take that one? Mary Catherine?
Yeah, so certainly there is the Federal Equality Act would have just anti-discrimination protections in place sort of across the board. I'll say that that's an uphill fight, right? I mean, you know the composition of the representatives who are in Washington, and think about how likely it is that a Senate led by Mitch McConnell is going to pass an LGBT explicit LGBT protection statute, especially one that extends to public accommodations and housing. It's a fight we always have to keep fighting, and we always have to keep reminding people that we do not have these civil rights, and we need these civil rights, and keep the conversation going. But I gotta say, I don't think that's something happening right away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, the next question is, I'm concerned for the city of Lancaster's, this question is from Eric. He's concerned about the city of Lancaster's poor Black and brown individuals who rely on services from anti-LGBTQ faith-based organizations. Will this decision have any effect on that?
So this decision is simply about employment discrimination. There are other cases, in fact, that are going to the Supreme Court next term. There's a case that will decide whether or not the foster care agencies that work, for instance, for the city of Philadelphia, or could work for any county or municipality, whether they have the right to refuse to provide certain services to people because of their religious views about gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation. I will say, these battles have gone on in other states too. And I don't think that social services have at all disappeared because of this. This is a fight that's kind of happening on a different level.
Thank you. So I would say then the same answer would apply to how that would affect like Christian colleges and small Christian nonprofits over 15 employees. So would this more be like, it would have to be like case by case?
So there's, there are already protections in the exemptions in the federal law for religious organizations that get to make religious decisions about some of their employees. This doesn't change that at all, right? There are still positions for which a Christian college can require that the person filling the position be a Christian and meet their their religious standards. This didn't change that at all. That is the same today as it was 3 weeks ago.
Thank you. The next one is from Melissa DiStefano. Even with the SCOTUS decision, do you believe anti-LGBTQ plus groups will still be on attack mode for students' rights? And also, what exactly can allies do to help push for non-discrimination in Pennsylvania?
Hello, Melissa. Very wonderful to hear from you. Melissa's son, Aiden, is one of the heroes who has stood up and made himself a target in every way by helping to defend the rights of trans students in school. Bless you, Melissa, for being that wonderful mom who has supported, not only supported Aiden, but then continued fighting for the rights of trans students in school. I think there is no question that the people who are trying to push back, who have decided that their kind of cultural battleground is over where trans people get to go to the bathroom, that those people are gonna be sticking to that fight, and we need to be prepared to continue push back and say, no, trans people are full human beings and deserve to have access to everything, including the damn bathroom.
And I just want to add into that, you know, what can allies or mama bears or you know, folks who allies, accomplices, what you can do on your level is to continue to let your elected official know on a city level, local level, on a state level, and you know, in Congress, that the need to support LGBT people is dire. Whether you have a personal experience with your child, with your sibling, with your parent, or whether you are witnessing it happen in your community. That's what needs to be done. And honestly, I've said this for 8 years now. If you see something, say something. Do not let anti-LGBT rhetoric just fly past. You know, do not let folks bully folks. I mean, we all don't have the capability. We're not super people, you know, and I'm not asking you to fight our battles, but if you hear some anti-LGBT rhetoric, nip it in the bud, say, hey, I don't want to hear that, you know, and twirl your baton. We always need someone to step up for us. The reason why I stepped up as a trans person is that I witnessed my trans peers, my trans and non-binary peers, be beat down to nothing. There are folks right now who cannot speak up for themselves because they're no longer here, you know, and this is the reality. Black and brown trans women are being murdered rapidly. This is a pandemic. You know, we are dealing with COVID, but in our community, we are struggling to exist in a world that is continuously resisting our existence. And what we need from our allies, from people who support us, is just that, you know, do your advocacy, figure out what is the best way for you to advocate, whether it's through Facebook, whether it's organizing people in your community, social distancing, mind you, wear a mask, washing your hands, but making sure that people are educated and conscious and not ignorant to the fact of the experiences that we hold, you know. And I do want to thank you, Melissa, for being a spectacular mama bear and an educator. You do a lot for everyone, and I appreciate you.
And you know, I think many of us have had, right, both experiences, right? The experience where someone was saying something really bigoted and my friends all were waiting for me to speak up and challenge. And then, you know, the experience where other people immediately stepped forward to you know, defend and protect me when I was being attacked. And it is a huge difference, right? It is so necessary for us all to speak up and defend our brothers and sisters and non-binary, community members too. We need to all have this fight.
Thank you all so much. And thank you, Melissa. If you're still watching, thank you. So here is the next question. This is from Carolee Ketzler. And this question is from Mary Catherine. You mentioned a state discrimination law already on the books in Pennsylvania that protects employees of smaller companies. Could you elaborate, and what is the law called? And does it specifically protect gender identity and sexual orientation?
Right. In Pennsylvania, our anti-discrimination law is called the Human Relations Act, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. And it prohibits discrimination in employment, it prohibits discrimination in housing, and it prohibits discrimination in public accommodations. That's, the businesses and everything else that you walk into. It does not include the words sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. We have been fighting for 2 decades, or close to it, as Naiymah said, to get those words expressly into the law. The good news is that the Human Relations Commission, which oversees sort of the administration of the law, has stated that it is of the same position set forth in the Bostock case, that the phrase sex discrimination also prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. But that hasn't yet been tested in the Pennsylvania courts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions so far? No. Nope, so far, no.
There is an amendment, a bill to amend the Human Relations Act of, was it 1955? The Civil Rights Act of 1955, to include gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation to current classes of protection against discrimination in these areas. But the bill, of course, is still sitting in committee, and we're really looking at who are our allies in the legislature who could get this bill outvoted and passed into law. We have a very unique situation here in Pennsylvania, but we have a very progressive governor who supports LGBT Pennsylvanians and is taking the steps to include us in data, and stands behind us as we fight for statewide protection.
Thank you, Naiymah. So I don't think there are any more questions. So with that being said, do you, Mary Catherine or Naiymah, do either of you wonderful panelists have any final thoughts for our audience?
Well, partly we're talking about all the work left to be done, but we also can look back and see how far we've come, right? I told you that my first idea of a legal career started with a Supreme Court decision that said I was illegal. And we really have come so far, and I'll tell you something that might be of interest to you to sort of understand how far we have come. The Supreme Court decision in Bostock versus Clayton County was written by Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Gorsuch was the first justice appointed to the court by President Trump. And you might be very surprised to find out that a decision in our favor was written by a justice appointed by President Trump. And just to give you something else to chew on about that, the way it works in the Supreme Court is that if the Chief Justice is in the majority on a decision, then the Chief Justice will decide who writes the decision. And Chief Justice Roberts, and you may have seen in the news, Chief Justice Roberts just supported striking down a terrible anti-abortion statute in Louisiana. Justice Roberts was in the majority on the Bostock case, and he is the one who chose President Trump's appointee to write that decision, right? And that is, you know, a decision that was made very deliberately to say, this isn't some wacko left, you know, liberal decision. This is really the law. It's what the law says, and we're going to enforce what the law says, and do it in a way that, you know, is, you can't say, oh, it's just those liberal justices. It really isn't just the liberal justices. And so I offer that not to suggest that, you know, either Roberts or Gorsuch are our great friends and allies, you know, going forward. Like, it's a very, very challenging court. But to say that, you know, imagine, you know, just how far we've come and how important it is that we do have even conservative justices saying, you know, LGBT people also have rights under our law.
Thank you. And, you know, we got more questions, but Naiymah, I'm gonna let you. Final thoughts? You good? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's just get the question because my bird is going off over here. But I did want to plug in some stuff at the end, but go ahead.
Sure, no problem. So, okay, so this question is from Michelle. So this question is for you both. Do you have any advice for college students? So, for example, her class of 2023 group chat, 900 members, recently had a discussion, debate, argument over how to discuss Black Lives Matter, social justice. Basically, some people believe that the First Amendment gives them the right to oppose LGBTQ rights. So how do we engage with those people? What do you think about cancel culture? Oh my. So Naiymah, I'm gonna let you, I'm gonna let you take that.
I mean, cancel culture is so complicated because, you know, a lot of the times we're canceling our own community because we don't agree. And I do advocate for your First Amendment right. I want you to be able to exercise your amendments and speak freely about what you agree and what you don't agree, and or how you align yourself. But the thing is this. We have these intersecting identities, and we have all of these oppressive situations, these issues that impact our lives on a daily basis. And who I lay down with and how I identify should not affect you as a person, because I'm not laying down with you and I'm not asking you to dress as such or put on specific outfits. So, you know, I think that, you know, having our personal bodies interact in our daily lives, it just further impacts or oppresses folks, you know, that we may encounter. It's just, you know, it could be the Starbucks barista who can look at you and tell that you're part of the LGBT, or assume that you're part of the LGBTQ community, you know, and this barista is that word, you know, and they're vocal about how they misgender you because they don't agree with what they think you are, or maybe your name on your cup. They will be specific around like putting a male name on your cup when you blatantly tell them that your name is Naiymah and they put Naeem. That's their form of discrimination. And when your personal bias or your personal feelings come into play, that is discrimination. And you have to ask yourself, if the shoe was on the other foot, how would you feel? You want to treat people as if you want to be treated. You know, yes, you have you can exercise your freedom of speech and say, you know, that you don't agree. You agreeing and being kind to someone is totally different. You know, I don't agree with a lot of things. I don't agree with the president, you know, on a lot of things, but I respect him, you know, because he's a human being, you know what I'm saying? And I expect that same respect in return. You know, with the college campus, you know, when we're in these institutions like this is where we start to experience debate and experience diversity. You know what I'm saying? And this is where you are prepping yourself for a real life world, and how you react in these situations is how you're going to react out in the streets and or in real life. You know, so is this something that you actually want to take along with you? Is to cancel someone out or their experience out because you don't agree with how they identify or who they love or how they dress? You know, this person can be that doctor that just might save your life. You know, I remember looking at, and again, you know, I get on my rambling, but I was looking at, oh gosh, what is it? Not Good Times. What is the name of that show? But anyways, he was like owner of a cleaners, back in the day. But
the Jeffersons.
The Jeffersons. Now look at this. So the white guy was saying all of these anti-black little antics, you know, and then he had a heart attack. And George performed CPR, you know, and brought that man back to life. And you know, when he woke up, he said, "You should have just let me die." You know, is that what we want? Whereas though, because you don't agree with who someone loves or how they're dressing or how they identify, that you will risk your own life in the situation to just die because you don't want them to save you. You know, like sometimes we have to surrender to the thought that you're powerless over someone else. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't control what they're doing with who they are. You're born in this world by yourself. You know, you can control yourself, but you also can control how you react to that person. And I would highly suggest that in our colleges that, and I'll say this over and over and over again, that we treat each other with respect, even if we do not see eye to eye. And I'll leave it like that. MC, do you have something?
Yeah, so, you know, when you're in college, like everything is sort of pressing so close on you, right? You're living with these people, you're going to school with these people, you're encountering all the same people. You don't really kind of get a break from them. And yet, I think quite often there isn't real interaction between people who disagree. There might be shouting, you know, and demonstrations and counter demonstrations. I honestly am not sure how much that ever convinced anyone who was being shouted at. So I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I am not at all a fan of like shunning somebody because they said something ignorant. I think particularly in college, you know, there's an opportunity to have conversations and to simply say, you know, when someone says something that's bigoted or that's unkind, to just say, I don't think that. And I don't think most people think that. And it's not really nice. You know, and that kind of a quiet comment could go, I think, a long way to making someone think twice about making that kind of bigoted comment again. I'm not saying there aren't times for shouting. There certainly are times for shouting, and there's certainly times for anger. But there's also, particularly when you're in such close quarters with people, there's an opportunity to persuade, and some of it is by example, the way Naiymah was talking about. If you talk to somebody with respect, not like, you're a terrible person because you just said that and you're scum of the earth, but, you know, I don't agree. I don't think that's the right way to talk about people. you know, giving them the respect of a real answer and a conversation is probably going to go farther to changing their view, and maybe persuading people. I think when the first reaction is yelling, sometimes there's an opportunity lost. So that's the thing I will say. And it's not unique to college campuses, but I think because of the way people are really sort of forced together, that it becomes more intense on college campuses.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Michelle says thank you. So, and thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for all of your questions. There are no more so far, I don't think. Nobody else has anything. Well, I guess that concludes our panel. I did not introduce myself in the beginning. I'm sorry, Naiymah, yes.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to update folks a little bit on something.
No problem. Okay, so my name is Madelyn Morrison. I am the director of the Bryson Institute of the Attic Youth Center. We are in charge of education and outreach, so I go to different facilities and educate them on LGBTQ history, how to work with LGBTQ clients and consumers, how to work with LGBTQ representatives in your workplace, and all kinds of fun, neat stuff. So please look for us if you're interested in a training or just want to say hi. Please email us at bryson@atticyouthcenter.org. And I'm going to turn it over to Naiymah with some last minute updates.
All right, thank you, Madelyn. So there was some requests for the actual bill that's in the Senate right now, and it's Senate Bill 614, and it's Senator Farnese who introduced this bill, and this is the amendment to the PA Civil Rights Act of 1955, which would include gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation to the current protected classes from discrimination. And that's the bill. I did want to lift up some victories here in the state. So as everyone should know, that we, the Pennsylvania Department of Motor Vehicles have offered up gender X markers for our PA IDs and our driver's license. And this will go in effect immediately. Folks are able to select gender X, you know, for both documents, and this will go on their real ID as well. And I see the claps and the thumbs up. This is amazing. This is another victory. And that's why I said that we should be joyous at the things that we're doing, because we are all doing this together. It is the movement that we're all doing that is persuading folks that to make these policies and continue to support LGBTQ, especially trans and non-binary Pennsylvanians, you know, without the threat of a lawsuit, if you know what I mean. And right now, what we're doing is, as I sit on the Commission on LGBT Affairs for the state of Pennsylvania, I'm working with the executive director and other commissioners on ways that we can make sure that implementation of the gender X is like as smooth as possible, and that folks are educated on why we're using gender X and why there's a need not to question someone's gender when they assert it at the time of renewing or getting a new ID or driver's license. And finally, I know that we are coming up on 2 minutes before our 7 o'clock deadline, but here in Philadelphia, well, the ACLU is investigating ways to decriminalize sex work as we work to end mass incarceration in the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of top 10 states in the Northeast that is affected by mass incarceration. And we look at the numbers, we do see that Black and brown people, especially Black folks, are disproportionately marginalized by the criminal justice system. And then when we look at it again, we look at Black and brown trans folks are sitting in prisons, are sitting in jails on pretrial. Some folks are in there with crimes that are nonviolent offenses with high bails. One of those charges is, or a few of those charges stem from sex work related offenses. And we are starting to do the work here in Philadelphia County to decriminalize sex work. And we hope that this process will be implemented statewide as we investigate what state laws are, and also as we sensitize and defund the police and reallocate resources. So when we say, and I want people to know that when we say defund the police, we're not saying abolish police. We're just saying defund the police and reallocate resources to other necessary departments like social services, like mental health, etc. So I did want to say that. And I want to thank you, Madelyn, for being an exceptional host and being there last minute for us. Mary Catherine, I am always, honored to sit on a panel with you and work alongside of you. Kimbria as well. Thank you for being our IT person tonight. And everyone who joined in on the live and who also joined in on our Zoom, I am exceptionally grateful to you because it is the work that we are all doing. This is a we thing. We are all doing this work in our own way to make sure that we can move our state in the right direction. So I want to thank you for working alongside us to continue to move the needle in the right direction for the state of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Naiymah. Thank you, Mary Catherine. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, everybody, for your questions, your comments, your thanks. We are absolutely moved, and I was so happy to do this panel today. This has been like the most fun thing that I've done today. Totally honest about that. So thank you so much for everything. Good night, everybody. Good night. Thank you for a wonderful panel.